Hello and welcome back, and just before we start today's video, I just wanted to touch on something really briefly: backups. If you are watching this right now and you don't have a backup, and by that I mean that you have your data that's identical in at least 2 locations, stop watching this video and get a backup. I know it's going to cost more. I know you've got a lot of data, and I know you feel that you shouldn't have to spend extra money in a NAS. That should be your backup. I get it. I understand the vibe. But I've spoken to enough people in the last week or so that have been hit by ransomware by other brands to know that it's about how much your data is worth if you lose it. And just for a moment, just think, if you lost all of your data right now, if someone got into it and tried to stop you accessing your data, how much would it actually cost you? Because that is how much you should be prepared to spend on a backup. Hello and welcome back, and that is right. Today we're going to talk about the very current subject of Synology hard drives. We already did a video last week where I showed what it was like when you installed some non-Synology hard drives inside a Synology XS system, and we even put an article about it. We reached out to Synology and detailed kind of the state of play on things, but we realized we don't actually have a video on this subject. We've kind of touched it briefly in other videos, but we've not really specifically bunged the eyeglass on it and taken a good look. I am Robbie. That, if I'm pointing in the right direction, is Eddie, the web guy, and today we're going to talk about Synology hard drives. We're going to talk about how Synology developed a whole part of their portfolio towards hard drives. We're going to talk about the hard drives themselves in terms of pros and cons. We're going to talk about why Synology has been working towards this and why they've changed policy in a number of ways. And we're going to talk about where we are now and how things are potentially going to change moving forward there. So as we go through all of this, it's worth remembering, really important, that although we are going to talk about the SSDs and although we are going to talk about the XS series, because of course it's incredibly relevant, the primary kind of focus of this video is the hard drives. And although we may splinter off, that is the core subject of this video. So without further ado, Eddie, tell me right now, if I say the word to you, Synology hard drives, what are you thinking?
It's boiling my blood, just like it's boiling so many thousands of people's blood, because everyone feel like they've been let down, they've been lied to, because all the time when they introduced the Synology drives and the drive locking, they said this is going to be only for XS series NASs, for enterprise, for rack mounts, for those people who are running 24/7 systems where the downtime is not acceptable and stuff like that. And then they did a thing, then they locked drives for 2422, which is Plus series model. There's only one model from their series which has drive locking, which already is indicated, like, are they gonna push this further? Are they gonna apply this to all NASs now, since they already did this to non-XS series model? So everyone's got mad about this because they bought 2422 model. They bought their WD Pro drives or Iron Wolf Pro drives, which normally were advertised in all those expos. They were coming on and standing, being on the same stand. They were recommending each other that they're working together. They have the sales management and everything. So those drives were treated as like a perfect solution because those 2 brands were actually working together to make something, something what works. And then they turned the back to all these vendors, all these hard drive vendors, and they said, like, oh, we're going to be friends with Toshiba now. We're going to put our firmware on Toshiba drives, and we're going to sell those drives under our label. So people got really mad because they think that Synology is just making money now. They're just trying to milk as much as possible. So it's not just that people are feeling let down. It's also actual physical problems when people are trying to move from their old systems to a new model, because every 2 or 4 years they're upgrading their range, and when people are moving their old drives to a new system, loads of functionality, like lots of features are disabled now, and they can't actually use their drives because it's like red alert, critical, get out. Those drives were fine in a previous model, but in this one, they'll just explode.
Okay,
so people are mad.
So I'll be honest, I was slightly worried prior to this video that you wouldn't be particularly candid. I'll be honest, you really blew me away there. So yes, a lot of the stuff you said there, largely, and if there's multiple Reddits, multiple Synology unofficial and official forums that kind of voice what you are saying there. So, and again, in the last stage of today's video, we're going to address a lot of what you said there and definitely talk about some of the ways in which Synology have changed towards a lot of that and other ways in which they've stand very, very firm on that. But again, that will come later towards the end of the video there. But let's talk a little bit there about how Synology got to this point, because you and I have been surrounded by Synology products for quite a great deal of time. We've, I would say at least 6 to 7 years we've had direct hands-on with the bulk of their range. And I remember when the idea of Synology hard drives was unheard of. It was kind of, no, that's not going to happen. And then things slowly started to happen, didn't they? We started to see Synology branded memory. We started seeing, of course, after that, the SAT5200, the SATA SSDs start to arrive, then the SNV series. And each of these kind of media and all the PCIe upgrades and stuff like that, they always seem to have a little bit of an inherent advantage. There was always something small that you got extra with them. And although a lot of users weren't in love with them, they like to have that flexibility, as you rightly point out there. So again, I can kind of see that logic eventually why they would lend their name to a range of first, labeled hard drives there. Again, not 100% certain why they picked Toshiba. It's a strange choice. I've got nothing against Toshiba, but some might argue they are very much in the third place in the, hard drive hierarchy there. But when they started talking about the Synology hard drives there, I think most users went, I'll allow it. Because one, they were at the time enterprise drives, at a Pro Series price. That is something that has changed a little bit over the last 6 to 8 months, it has to be said. Also, they had that ability to upgrade the firmware as well. So the ability to upgrade hard drive firmware from within the NAS system was advantageous. Anyone that's ever had to update the firmware on hard drives knows it's a real pain in the arse. So the ability to be able to do that was, quite good. And then their workload rate and everything about it was just very good drives. And I think the turning point, as you say, was this moment where they suddenly went, and now we're going to release solutions that really you should only use these drives for. And I think that's where we kind of are up to right now. Their hard drives in the 22 series, I might double check, but I think there isn't a single device sub 22 series, I might be wrong there, that has this kind of reduced confirmed compatibility on their drives. But right now, a lot of users that have come into that 22 series, this is their jumping in moment there, are looking at these solutions and going, okay, I like these drives. I don't quite like why I can't use my Seagates, as you rightly point out. So that's kind of where we are in terms of the storage media. And unlike the SNV series, those NVMe SSDs, or the one that's got power protection failure, I think P2P, and you've got their SAT5200, which have got great durability there. I think it's 1.0 drive writes per day. These hard drives, they're good, but I don't think they're outstanding in their architecture there. So although the idea of their systems only having their drives has ruffled a lot of feathers, for me, I'm slightly less annoyed about that than you are. What I'm a little bit more put out by is the recent updates there in terms of how these things are being displayed. And that's really, for those that aren't aware, that covers the basis of where we're up to now. So let's talk about the hard drives themselves. I said we get onto that part too. So once again, for you, Eddie, straight away, what are the pros and cons of Synology hard drives for you? If you were going to get a system that had, if you use Synology hard drives in order to get the full Synology ecosystem experience there on the 22 series, what are the things you like and dislike about the drives?
So we can start with cons, because Toshiba, if you put them on the chart regarding quality, they've never been the best drives out there. They've always been HDSD drives the best out there, or WD, HDSD now they're called, Exos drives. And Toshiba was always competing with price, because their drives were louder and they wouldn't last as long as other drives. Whatever tests they're doing and they're trying to prove otherwise, Toshiba were always a budget drive. And now seeing that this budget drive is used under Synology label and being sold twice the price, that really boils someone's blood, because now you're paying for a crappy drive twice the price you would pay for the Pro drive or Gold drive or something like that. So that the price is really annoying. If they would to put at least the price exactly the same as it would be like comparable Access sort of drive, then people will be okay with that probably. But that's not the only con. Other con is that the speed they are producing those drives, they cannot fulfill the demand. Usually you will find shops that these drives are out of stock. You need to wait like a few weeks or months to get those drives in. And the third thing is like capacities. They're not up to top sort of capacity sort of bar, because they're already 20 terabyte drives, they're 18 terabyte drives, where they are stuck with their 16 terabyte drives. So these are all the really problematic things. The positives, of course, are that they put their own firmware. So obviously their Synology NAS system can actually talk to these drives, so they can predict failures and stuff like that, which could be anyway done with health management software, what was on the Seagate Pro drives and other Seagate drives. So they did already this symbiotic relationship between those drives. Now they're adding their own firmware, which they are calling is better, but I don't think so it's bad. But okay, let's believe it is better. So if there is a same brand is putting the same software on the NAS on the drives, I believe that's a better solution. So if you need something reliable in your data center, then this might help. Positives. What other positive could be about this thing? I really do not know.
Because I'll be perfectly frank with you, I've got my notes here, and you've covered the bulk of the pros and cons that I've already covered. I would like to see some of the stats to back up that Toshiba failure rate, because I don't know if that you're referring to like Backblaze or anything like that. So again, I'll be slightly nervous about agreeing with you on the failure rates on some of the drives there, because I'm not 100% myself, so I don't know about a lot of that kind of stuff. I know the pricing on these drives has crept up since they first launched there, and I know the capacity tiering there of, I think it's 8, 12 and 16 TB. That's problematic, and I think on some compatibility lists, when they talk about the maximum capacity in some places, 20 TB has not been factored in some areas there, and I don't know if that's related to this or not. I mean, the drives themselves, when I have used them, credit, they're good drives. The performance was good. They are clunky and noisy, but these days any drive above 8 or 10 TB is clunky and noisy, and data center drives aren't designed to be silent anyway. I think, again, when it comes to the architecture of these drives, I just wish I knew why it was this particular drive. When you do look at the compatibility list that we referred to earlier on in the video, if you look at the DS2422 or 3622XS, and you look at the compatibility list there, they've got all of the Synology drives and this one lonely little UltraStar that sits there in the middle. Now, I believe that is an SED, self-encrypted drive, there in the middle. But again, as you point out, most people, when we've looked online and when we've talked to end users, have kind of said, for my enterprise class system, I would have gone Exos, I would have gone Gold, I would have gone UltraStar. So it seems not a lot of them would have picked Toshiba MG series. So again, it was an odd choice, I think, in terms of the brand to partner with there. Perhaps there's something I'm not seeing there, I'm not sure. But that's really it for like pros and cons. And I said we're not really going to talk about the other storage medias, but I would say some of their SSD, again, the durability as mentioned, the power failure cache there on some of the NVMEs, that's good stuff too. But as long as I don't see a Synology Value Series drive, I'm not, I can see a place for these drives if you're looking at, EMC, NetApp, HP. If you were going to buy one of those solutions at the enterprise level, it wouldn't even occur to you that you would buy some Exos. You would get the labeled drives. Yes, they put a ridiculous markup on those drives, but there's no denying that at that tier level, they wouldn't even blink. They would just go straight and get those drives. So again, my critique of these drives is more about the choices by the brand in the background rather than the drives themselves. So I guess the big question now is kind of, why has Synology made these choices? Why have they decided to start going down arguably a more rigid route for their XS series of devices? We can all kind of see the way things have been over the last few years before I chip in and read my fun little notes here. Eddie, what's your input on that one? Why do you think Synology has been making these changes to their portfolio and the way they're presented?
I think they just become a little arrogant and you can't blame them for that actually, because you know that they are doing probably the best software out there. They're probably the most reliable, the most secure NAS on the paper. If you look statistically, there are no attacks happening. There are features what other NAS vendors do not offer, like high availability, active backups, and having their own Presto service, like VPN service, so you can synchronize NASes and all
SHR,
this like software.
SHR as
They
well.
have worked on software so hard. They have worked on software so hard that is really polished and is really good. There are of course a few things missing out, but it's pretty good. So that's what they are proud of about. So people are choosing their NASes because of security, easy to use, and things like that. So Synology were thinking probably, okay, what's our future plan? What's the long-term plan? And they were looking at HP servers, and they were thinking, oh yeah, we could probably move that direction. What HP servers do, they do their own servers, they do their own drives. There's no way you can be using any other drives or network cards even, or RAMs, nothing. Everything is labeled there. So they were thinking like, oh yeah, we should probably move the same direction, just follow the big guys. But I think what they didn't realize that they are not in that's enterprise market, and they are, I think, they are hoping for something what they haven't expected. Because they started with the home market, they started with a home user, small business, and then they created the rack mounts. So they were kind of touching around that subject about being enterprise. And now they thought like, okay, let's shift, all our attention to rack mount, because there's so much profit, because the same rack mount box you can sell for twice the price. And then if you start locking the drives in, they were thinking like, this is the easiest way to make profit. With just one rack, you can make a profit, because otherwise you need to create like 10 or 20 desktop models to compete with those profits you could make from enterprise. So they thought probably, yeah, let's do that. So they might even consider maybe phasing out from the house market, like home sort of budget market. I hope they don't.
So, I'm going to take a slightly less nihilistic approach. I think when we've looked at their portfolio and the way things have changed over the last 5 years, I think we are maybe in step 3 of a 5-year plan that maybe has like 5 or 6 steps to it. When we've looked at the way these solutions have been produced, and then we saw the development of C2. C2, when it first arrived, and things like Drive and that were introduced in a formal way, but in a much more hesitant, probably by comparison, way to any other solution. And now we have seen an enormous shift towards it when we've seen those annual reviews. We've seen the way things are produced. And you make a very valid point there. The software is the best out there right now within the NAS sector. Not just in terms of usability and a lot of the features that are covered, but just generally the user experience is largely, when it comes to the software and dealing with these solutions and interacting with them, whether you've got an on-site tech or you're doing it yourself, it's a much better experience. So when they introduce these hybrid bare metal kind of services, again, platform as a service, software as a service, PaaS, SaaS, when we look at those and that development, you're right. They're clearly vibing towards NetApp, HP, EMC, blah, 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 blah. But I don't think they're gunning for them precisely. I think what they've done is they've looked at that market, which is incredibly self-regulated. It's very much a case of they decide how much things cost. They don't try and outpace each other too much. They've all agreed what the general value of these products are, the general value of the support is. And I think Synology have looked at this model and gone, it's this wide, they're all up here, no one's covering this bit. We've covered NAS, we've dominated NAS, we've taken over NAS. That area there, they want to forge a new area, I think, that's underneath those. Not in the most conventional formal sense where they're going to go, we're under those, that would be suicide. But what they're producing there is a viable and potentially more, I hate to use the word cost effective, but definitely a more affordable alternative to those other enormous ecosystem platforms at the hyperscale level. Now, again, as we've seen them develop a lot of this portfolio, we've seen them move towards these cloud services, maybe we'll start to see these XS and enterprise level series suddenly get access to, maybe they'll start arriving with C2 space, maybe they'll start arriving with superior support. I remember, I think it was a few years ago, we saw them premiere the Synology Partners program, which wasn't really intended at end users so much as it was, I don't want to use words like resellers, but definitely the middle people there, and it was tiered at bronze, silver, gold, and stuff like that. And it allowed a lot of that support advances, and there was 24-hour support, advanced replacement, 2-hour response times. And those are the things that those higher tiers people demand. That's why they cost as much as they do. Not just prestige and control in their own economy, but also because there is a degree of service included in that, with actual people and actual responses that I think Synology are trying to gravitate towards, but as you say, they aren't there yet. So I do think we are in the middle of a grander plan right now by the brand, and that's kind of why this is all happening. If I look at my notes here, I can see that again they have already talked about advanced replacement services in other areas. I didn't see coverage of the hard drives in the advanced replacements, but it was certainly there. And this closed ecosystem that's they're slowly developing towards for the enterprise tier, I don't think it is impossible to imagine that they will succeed in this. I think they will succeed in this if they keep pushing forward. And I think that's what they've done. They're that guy at the casino. They've decided, I'm going all in on this. I can't go home now. It's this or bust. And therefore, I don't think we're going to see a lot of give on this. We will talk about some of the ways there's been adaptation in a bit. But as far as this plan moving forward, I think that's what this is. And it's something that isn't new. This feels to me like this has been something that's been in the works since about 2018-19, when we started seeing these drives starting to arrive. And one could also argue that Synology have never strayed away from this idea of the enterprise tier being handled very differently than the normal tier. I was going to touch on it earlier on. One of the clearest examples of this is Synology Hybrid RAID. It has been a contentious point for many users for many, many years. People have purchased Synology products, and I'm just going to focus on DiskStation desktop model for a moment. They've bought these products and they've looked at the XS series. They've looked at the 5-year warranty, great systems, and then gone, where's SHR? Why is it, what, why? That's great. That's one of the things I like about Synology. And of course, when we contacted Synology about this, they confirmed that because SHR, though it has a tremendous fluidity in allowing you to mix drives, it doesn't have the performance as traditional RAID. And at the enterprise tier, they removed SHR from there. Now, we did some experiments. We took an SHR from an existing NAS, moved it over, popped it inside an XS. Worked a charm. Worked immediately. But the option for SHR was not available in the system there. And that was a clear, conscious choice by the brand that the enterprise tier, they were kind of, nope, we're going to stick by our guns. We've got our principles. We've got our own way of doing things. And we're saying the enterprise tier must have this. We've made a promise. It's this. And I think that same logic that's applied to SHR, which I believe has existed for about 5 or 6 years at least, is what we're seeing here continued playing out. They're towing that line and they're sticking with that line. It's not necessarily popular, let's be realistic. A lot of us don't like it that much, but at least they're sticking by their guns on that. So again, it's a muddy subject there, and I think this is going to be as contentious as SHR in years to come. So this brings us on to our last section, kind of where we are now and moving forward, because lots of people who are on the verge of buying stuff, whether they've, they're coming up to the new budget year for their business, new financials, they're investing in a new solution post-pandemic world when they're starting to get a lot more people in their offices that they've got there. A lot of people are looking at upgrading their internal systems for business, and therefore this is where they come into this, where they've been researching online. And now they're wondering, right, should they still buy a Synology product? And if they do buy a Synology product, what are the jumps, the hurdles, the tails there? So again, with regards to where we are now and drive kind of appearance there, what have you heard on this, Ed?
That's what it is. Synology is really slow about changing things or listening to people. That most of the time they're ignoring the pain people are having. So there are so many cases been that people have bought their Plus series or XS series models with their Pro series or HDSD drives or Seagate drives, and it doesn't work, and they can't return those boxes anymore. And when they're talking to Synology, Synology doesn't know what to do because they made that software the way it is, and they can't just do some changes for certain users. But based on that, I think they did do change something, and that's why you can find online now that there are actually hacks available for Synology drive locking, because there have been so many people who actually invested so much money, and those drives are just sitting on the table, a couple of £1,000s or dollars worth of stuff, and you can't return them. So they figured out that when they go into the system, the operating system, the back door, if you go in there, you will see that there is a file which is actually whitelisting what drives are allowed in Synology system. So if you have bought your Seagate Ironwall Pro drives, you just put those serials into that file, and then DSM will think that, oh yeah, these are whitelisted drives and they are fine, so you don't get all those red alerts, and they will work with your Synology. But it's just a matter of time when Synology will close this down. But it's just a proof that it's all fake. All this drive locking is fake. That Synology just decided, like, yeah, we're gonna turn instead of having non-compatible, like compatible sort of list, we are gonna do non-compatible list, so whitelisting. So only the drives on the whitelist will be working, which is a really silly way to do things. But that's the first thing. But I think they have listened a little bit, because there are so many support tickets coming through Synology. They got like, oh, we got enough, we didn't think that people will be moving their drives to new systems, and now we need to deal with all these people. So when they rolled out DSM 7.1 now, actually, instead of showing the alerts about non-compatible drives in red, now they're showing just a warning. So that would calm people down a little bit.
But one thing I would say real quick is it's never been that people can't use their drives. There was a period, I think, when there was moving drives back and forth, but people can still use their drives. It was about the support from the brand, and I will get on to a Synology manager, one of their product managers we spoke to on that. But I think, yeah, the idea of putting the drives in, particularly if you have bought this XS system, you bought a bunch of Pros, and I think I vaguely remember a big old Reddit post about someone that had spent, I think, 8 to 10 grand on their setup with these other drives, and then of course they felt it was for a client and they couldn't present this product to their client and then have a big old red critical warning there, because they would do the installation, walk away, and then ring, 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 why is this product showing red? So I think Synology at least listened to people, and when they were talking about how this red critical message was quite intimidating, it was an extreme move by them. But yeah, you're right, DSM 7.1, the beta, we've been playing with it in the background. I think a few other sites online have done it as well. So as you mentioned, that red warning has now been replaced by like an amber kind of warning there, which is still not great, let's be honest. And some things, so a lot of the smart stuff, temp, bad sectors, a lot of that test is now available to these third-party drives being used in their system. I use the word third-party, obviously that's a Synology viewpoint, what consists of third-party. And then, of course, hard drive migration is still available. But again, hard drive migration at the enterprise level isn't ideal. A lot of people don't really like to do that when they get a new solution. They want everything fresh, box fresh. So again, having that option is so-so. But I think one of the biggest concerns for people, well, I say biggest, actually, there's two main concerns for a lot of people there. And it comes down to, one, how far does Synology support extend to if you are using an XS series with non-drives? Because is it a case that Synology will just completely turn their back on you, or is it a case where they will be they'll provide support up to a point? And I will talk about that in a moment, because obviously the second, arguably more populist and bigger concern for many is how far is this logic going to be spread? Is this going to go to this station? Is it going to go to comedically the J's, the Pluses, the standard series of devices there? Do you think Synology would extend this logic to disk station at the value prosumer SMB budget value tier at all?
They'll have to. All these years, we could use WD drives, Seagate drives, and whenever something was wrong with volumes or RAIDs or something operating system has caused, they always were giving you support, which made sense because your operating system in charge of those drives. There's nothing to do with mechanical drives or drive firmware. Don't give me that, you know. If they're going to stop supporting those drives, they are not of Synology, then I think they'll be just like adding more fuel to all this ongoing case, and people will really start turning back to Synology, because that wouldn't be right. Because all these years you did support all other drives, and now you're not suddenly. So if you do that, that would just mean that you're trying to do something really sneaky, that, oh, we need to cut down the costs on support, so everyone who is coming out with non-Synology RAM, non-Synology hard drives, you just tell them straight away, go away, we are not going to deal with you. So they are saving costs and time on artificially created problem, and that would be really sneaky, and people would hate that.
But do you think they will do that? What do you think
They have done that with RAM already, with memory. If you come through Synology support and ask them what's going on with my RAID or something, and they'll check logs and they see that you haven't used Synology RAM, they'll say we can't give you a support, which is also not right, because not always, everyone knows that not always RAM is going to cause problems, because the RAM what Synology using is just rebranded Samsung RAM. That's the same thing. So what's the difference? There's no firmware on the RAM. There's no. So if there's something wrong with the RAID or something, that's your operating system what caused it, not RAM, not hard drives, your DSM. So if you want to blame someone, blame your own software.
But just to confirm then, just before I chuck in my 2 cents, so do you think Synology would go down the road on their current prosumer SMB value with closed Synology only hard drive compatibility? Do you think they will?
They did already. They crossed the line already with Plus Series 24, 22 model. They promised everyone they will never do that on Plus Series models, and they did. So based on that, you know, I could expect everything from them.
See, right now, I think we're at very different sides of the seesaw there, because I just can't see them doing that. And maybe you're watching this video in the future, and maybe I've been proved wrong. But I've said this in other videos, and I will reiterate this point. I can't see them doing it for several reasons. One, because unless they completely got rid of the J and the value series entirely, unless they completely wiped and got rid of them, there is no way a user is going to get like a value series NAS like that white one over there and have to buy Synology hard drives. It would.
Yeah, but you were mentioning something about value series Synology. Toshiba has not just MG enterprise drives; they also have NAS series drives. Nothing stops them to rebrand those drives and stack them.
Oh, absolutely, and that was the point I was going to make. Unless they remove the J and value tier, I do not believe they would go down this road and do limited compatibility, at least. And by the way, when we're using the word limited compatibility, I do think it's important that we highlight that you can still use Synology drives. It's that certain services and certain features of the drives appear to be being cut back, which a lot of people would still call that drive locking, of course. But what I'm saying is, one, if they remove the J and value tier, then I would believe they would do that with the hard drives. And two, as you rightly say, if they released a Synology value series of hard drives under the N300 series from Toshiba with, you know, the same kind of firmware kind of support, and they kind of marketed them in the same way, then definitely I think it would happen. But only in those two scenarios. In almost every other regard, I can't see them doing it. Because one, as mentioned, the cost there would be difficult for the value series users. And two, with these hard drives and the additional capacities, the N300 series, even at the lower capacities of 2, 4 and 6 TB, they are noticeably noisier, these hard drives, over the likes of your WD Red Pluses and your Seagate Iron Wolf standards. So I can't see them doing that, because it might arguably undermine the presentation of their sleek, quiet, kind of software-focused product at those tiers. So again, if they remove the JL value tier entirely, and or they produce their own value series of hard drives, those are the only two circumstances I can see them going down this road under the XS series. I just can't see it happening. It would be too much for that tier. And the other thing I would highlight as well, and this has been a common recurrent point in all manner of different social sites, I hate seagulls, that a lot of people have said, I've contacted a Synology support representative or contacted my local Synology program provider and asked them, will the next series of devices have Synology only hard drive direct compatibility and support? And they've not provided any direct information. Now, a lot of people have gone, well, that means it, that confirms it. They're definitely going to do drive locking on those. It doesn't confirm it. What it confirms is, once again, Synology being very oblique and very secretive about their products. And that's a big part of their methodology as a business. They don't like talking about new releases. If there was a new DS922 released in 3 days, I guarantee if I contacted Synology US, Synology the UK, they wouldn't say a word, even if it was coming out in just 3 days. So I'm just saying that there is no, I think a lot of that silence isn't to do with blood on their hands and guilt. I think it is simply that that's part of their methodology to be very quiet about it. So yeah, that's my thoughts on it. I don't see them going down only Synology drives with all, to use all the Synology features on that tier unless those 2 instances occur there. But before we go a little bit further and I talk about a quotation I've got there, let's talk about warranty and support. So real quick, for you, Eddie, if you were to purchase a brand new DS3622 XS Plus, you've got your 12 bay there, and you get hold of some WD Red Pro drives. So you've got that, you've got your NAS that's got 5 years of warranty, you've got your drives that have got 5 years of warranty on there. I'm going to keep using the word warranty when we could just say support. What do you expect from Synology on that solution if you're still using those drives in terms of support and warranty? If you have a failure,
full support, just like normally I would get. There's no exceptions. Anything, any system problems, any volume, any RAID, anything hardware related issues, anything completely, starting from software to hardware, full support. That's what I would expect.
So you would expect that. Okay, cool. Well, I'll be honest, I expected you to talk for longer. Sorry, I should have jumped in quicker there. Because the reason I mentioned it, and those of you that have read the article that I published last week, where I talked about what we thought of Synology hard drives and a lot of the back and forth, because as mentioned before, me and Eddie don't necessarily agree on everything. There's some things we definitely agree on. I reached out to a Synology product manager, and quite a senior one, and I gave him 2 examples, 2 of the most common examples, and I'm going to read from my notes here. Hopefully I'll put it on screen as well. But these were 2 examples of what I thought culminated people's concerns regarding support from the brand if they're using third-party drives. So the first example was having like a 3622 XS Plus, and they purchased it with 12 Seagate Exos drives, and then 36 months down the line, they suffer an unexpected but perfectly reasonable PSU failure on the system. Will the brand support the user and provide a replacement PSU, given that clearly those drives have had nothing to do with the PSU failure in almost every single instance at all? So that was the first example. The second example was, once again, they get a hardware failure, still within reasonable parameters of a mass-produced product in 2022, but this time it's controller based. So it's controller with the SATA ports directly connecting with the storage media. And in this user case scenario, 36 months in, they're using non-Synology hard drives. Where will the utility of the end user's use of non-Synology media drives sit with support from the brand? So I gave these 2 examples, and this is the quote that we've been given back. So I'm going to give you the quote, and then I'm going to ask you your thoughts on it. When a customer makes a technical support request, our engineers will work with them in troubleshooting the cause of the issue and find a solution to resolve it. If it is determined that a failure is directly attributable to a third-party component that has not been validated by Synology, our engineers may take the decision to reject continuing the diagnostics process. This is carried out because in many cases there is little that our engineers can do without having the exact components on hand to replicate the problem and then determine a way to work around or mitigate them. So that's the quotation. Now I can tell you what I'm reading from that. I would read that, and I read, if I use non-Synology hard drives, as long as those hard drives didn't cause the problem, I'm going to get support there. Yes, it's definitely presented in that kind of TNC safety way, but that is kind of what I'm reading there. I'm reading there that as long as it can be proven that the drives didn't cause the problem, I can use non-Synology drives there. I'm going to lose some of the services. Mind you, DSM 7.1 looks like it's going to give some back, but I'm still not going to get the full storage experience there. But support-wise, my PSU, my controller, all that kind of stuff, it sounds like I'm going to be fine. But another thing I'll say to you then, this is something I'm going to update the article below, because it was something that someone reached out to me and asked me, and I realized it wasn't in the article, so I'm going to add that to. And it was, what if you had to find a middle ground or a compromise so Synology could keep their overarching plan I say their plan, what I believe to be their plan, to create a value tier in the upper echelon there of hybrid storage, again, SAS, PAS, that kind of tier. What would you think would be a middle ground between them? So I've got an idea what I would, if I was in Synology's boots right now, and I'm not, let's face it, I'm just sitting here in this little office trying not to kill seagulls, but if I were, what would you present as an alternative to this current setup? Would you maintain the previous status quo? Would you eliminate Synology hard drives entirely from the equation? Or would you find a middle ground? How would you see as a peaceful or arguably better alternative to the current state of affairs? Sorry about the break in recording there. Just had to take a delivery. That's what you get for being a one-man operation. You've got to do everything. Anyway, back to my question. Eddie, if you had to present a middle ground so everyone's happy right now, what would it be as far as Synology and their hard drives and the XS series overall?
I think they should give people choice, because all these years there was a choice, and then suddenly it was taken away from people. So that would upset them. So even if you say that you're going to have limited support, so let them have this choice at least. They'll be okay with that. Just let them have a choice. That's it.
I mean, for me, the middle ground there, as you rightly put it, is that idea of choice. And I think although they're trying to aim for that upper echelon tier, you're right, having the Synology branded drives is going to be incredibly important there and very vital. My middle ground is very similar to yours, but with one tiny extra thing on top. And it would be, if a person is going to go for Synology hard drives, purchase the system pre-populated. So much like we've seen from WD in the past and from the enterprise tier, have you ever tried buying an enterprise level rack mount unpopulated? And I am talking your NetApps, your EMCs. I'm not even going as far as HPs, even some of the other ones in the middle. You can't even buy unpopulated systems. And I know Synology are trying to keep it value, but I would rather see Synology hard drive media arriving in Synology systems pre-populated. So the idea would be that you buy an XS rack mount for the 21 series, fully populated with 8s, partially populated with 8s, fully populated with 12s or 16 TBs, not to have the drives separate, have those drives as advanced replacements, have them as part of the 5-year, have the system be sold with that premier inclusion of a bronze, silver and gold level service guarantee built into it. To me, not only would that facilitate the choice that you just mentioned there, but the users that want to get a first-party ecosystem can get that first-party ecosystem there. I think, for me, that would be a much better way of presenting this by the brand. And I think they've leaned way too much in one direction more than facilitating both of those groups. Now, I think it's a bit late in the day for them to pursue that. And I think maybe they thought pre-populated devices would already have such a high price point that it would kind of arguably poorly represent their product at its value or its cost level. But again, yeah, maybe that would, for me, would be the only way that this could have been pursued in a way that everyone would have been happy. Rather than see it as making people choose A or B, it would have been, oh, you can have A, but isn't B looking fantastic as well? Why not consider that there? But I think we should wrap things up. Again, all of the points we've discussed today are detailed in the article linked in the description. If there's anything else you'd like to add to the subject, Eddie, that we've not talked about thus far, now is your chance.
No, I think we covered everything. Yeah, just that's exactly what you said. Give a choice, and and make your product look so shiny that people will want to have it instead of being forced to have it. So
And
simple.
they've done that so well with DSM and done it so well with a lot. I mean, look at the DS3622XS Plus. Although the CPU, that 6-core, I think 2015-16 Gen Xeon there, you know, it's server grade, it's keeping within a certain cost level, but everything else about that device I really, really like. And I think even when I was doing the review, it was one of these things. I think I did a should you buy a 5x5, and I think straight away one of my top ones there was like, it's a great system. God, I wish I had more flexibility on the drives. But yep, that's it really. If you have enjoyed this video, click like. Community have obviously tried our best today to represent, frankly, the pissed off part of the community and the community that love Synology with, you know, all the dearness in their heart. But ultimately, we're still at a point where there doesn't seem to have been a resolution where everyone's happy right now. And hopefully, maybe when DSM 7.1 becomes a full release, maybe there'll be improvements to it. Who knows? But other than that, thank you so much for watching. If you have enjoyed it, click like. If you want to learn more, of course, click subscribe. There's a free advice section linked in the description that me and Eddie, the web guy, answer your inquiries there. Let's face it, if you're going to hire a tech or a data storage consultant to help you with your data storage needs, I don't know if you've looked, it's damned expensive. So we do have that free advice section for me and Eddie answering your queries. It might take us an extra day or so to answer your questions. We try our best to answer every one as unbiased as possible. There's a donate section there. Use it, ignore it, it's totally up to you. Stick your email in there. Couldn't give a chuff about your email. We're not going to do anything with it. Couldn't care less. But thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you next time. Not going to wave, Eddie? No? Okay. One way, okay.